Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good evening. Good afternoon, wherever, depending on wherever you are in the world. My name is Tosin Aje-Adegbite, and I'm the Senior Director of Product at EAB. And today I'll be talking to you all about building inclusive products. Super excited to have this discussion. I'm assuming if you're here, it's something that's of interest to you as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. First, I want to make sure, can everyone hear me okay? Can you drop a line in the chat? Okay, I see some good mornings. Perfect. And I see that you heard the music playing in the background, so you're hearing me just fine. So wonderful. So we'll go ahead and get started. So first, I wanted to give you a little bit of details about me, who I am, where I'm coming from, what my background is. So I've been working in technology for a little over 20 years. For the last 15 years, I've been really focused on product management. And within those 15 years, those last 8, I've been really keenly focused on building digital education products. I find that really combining my social good with what I feel like I do pretty well really brings me a lot of joy and energy when I come into work on a day-to-day basis. So I feel very fortunate to be able to do this. Some things that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about DEI. For some personal reasons in terms of my journey and my career journey and what I've experienced, but also looking to just really help others to kind of overcome certain things in our corporate workspaces. I participated and led a few employee resource groups. That has brought me a lot of energy as I come to work on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes honestly can be exhausting, but all together very rewarding. I love traveling off the beaten path. One thing that I did a few years ago is that I hiked Kilimanjaro. I just found it to be a really enjoyable experience. It was tough, but something that I really enjoy doing and look forward to doing other things like that. And then lastly, but most importantly to me, is like raising great humans. So I happen to be a mom of 3, and I take that job very seriously. And I really want to make sure that I'm raising great humans for the rest of us. So that's a little bit about me. So before I kind of get started into some of the content here, I really wanted to take a quick poll, and you can drop, I don't have an official poll set up, so you can drop your answers in the chat. But I really want to get a sense from you all, like when you think about building products with inclusion in mind, what does that mean to you? What does that look like? So I'll give us like maybe about a minute to drop your answers in the chat there, and I'll read off what I can see. Let's see, any thoughts around what does that mean? What does that look like in your day-to-day? All right, I'm not seeing anybody participate. Thinking about all possible end users. I love that. Thank you. Anyone can use. Great. Yes. User experience that enables anybody to use them. Yep. Building products that any user can successfully use and get value from. I love that. Building for not just some. Yep. Products that are friendly to people with different backgrounds and abilities. I love these. Thank you for putting your thoughts in there, and feel free to continue to do so as we go through and interact that way. So I'll share a little bit about like my definition of what I think that looks like. And to me, it's building products that delight customers by anticipating their needs, empathizes with their pain points through a diverse, equitable, and inclusive lens. So I'll talk a little bit about how I kind of came to this conclusion of like, here's my definition of how I view the world of building inclusive products as I go through this presentation. But this is kind of a little bit about what it means to me. So first I wanted to start with the why. Why do we think this is important? Why should we even be thinking about inclusivity when we talk about product management? The first thing is not doing so could really stunt your product growth. In a world of free enterprise where there can be anywhere between 0 to an infinite number of competitors, really trying to get market share from the same customer pool, one of the easiest and the best ways and the quickest ways you can really do so is really developing a deep understanding of your customers and what their pain points are. And then building products that are best suited to help solve them. Remember that customers really only buy products that help solve solutions. to some of their key pain points. And the way we do that is really making sure that we know them very well, and we see all the different, I guess, variations or aspects of what makes up our customer pool. I really love this quote by Jesse Jackson, because it's applicable, I think, in several different contexts, but in the context of what we're talking about today, inclusion is not just a matter of political correctness, it's key to growth. So again, just really honing in on the fact that, you got to know your customers, you got to know the depth and the variety of the breadth, I should say, the depth and the breadth of your customer base, and what are the things that you're building to kind of really help solve their pain points. Keeping your customers engaged. So as a product manager, this is one of the things that I think we are constantly looking into in terms of a metric that we're trying to measure. Like, how engaged are we keeping our customers? What features are they using most frequently? How often are they using it? How long are they kind of engaging with that particular feature or capability? And creating a successful product really means that you kind of have this high customer engagement. And then when you think about that, kind of going back to that second point, your customers, 99% of them come from various different backgrounds, right? So we're talking about race, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic, what part of the country they've grown up in. So really, again, thinking up through that diversity from the lens of like all the different aspects of that make up diversity, and ensuring that we are building things that are really going to keep those customers that we really want to make sure that we are engaging with, engaged. I love this quote from Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook, because I think it kind of, again, hones in on it really well. We're building products that people with very diverse backgrounds use. So we have to keep that in mind when we're thinking about what we're building and why, and who we're building that for. And the last point, if some of the other points didn't kind of resonate, I just think it's just the right thing to do, right? One thing that I think 2020 has really taught a lot of us is that with the pandemic and everything that has gone on with a lot of social justice movements, in the world, when we're thinking about the Black Lives Matter, the Asian American and Pacific Islander movement, and movement around Latin American and Native Americans, and the list goes on, right? That it's really just the right thing to do. And if organizations are not going to hold themselves accountable, there's so many think tanks and organizations out there today that will hold your organization accountable. So if it doesn't appeal to just like your moral compass that is just the right thing to do, someone will kind of hold you to account at some point that it is the right thing to do. So I love this quote by Stephen Covey, because I think it really just kind of, again, hits it on the head in terms of our strength lies in our differences, not in our similarities, and that we really want to kind of continue to celebrate those versus trying to figure out a way to kind of make everybody the same, or eliminate where we see some differences. So, I wanted to provide some examples of what can happen when we don't think of inclusion when we're building out our products. Some of these are examples that you're probably very much familiar with. If not, I guess you'll learn about them today. So the first one is Twitter's image cropping algorithm. So back in January of 2018, Twitter put an image cropping algorithm, AI, into their product. And the interesting thing about this is that it's one of those where, it essentially takes, if you have some images that you have a group of images that you've kind of put on Twitter, and, in the case of maybe you have two individuals, I'm sure some of these individuals, these two gentlemen probably look very familiar to some of you, that one happens to be white, one happens to be black. It seemed to always have a bias towards showing the face of the white person first. So in the sense that if you have that carousel of images and it's going to show you like a preview of what that image is, it always seemed to kind of bubble up the face of the white person. So this picture here that you're seeing is actually as a result of an experiment that a cryptographic designer, cryptographic engineer did, and he was kind of playing around with different variations, different iterations to see like what would be the outcome, and the outcome was always the same. So very, very interesting there. So Twitter obviously had to go back and kind of course correct to resolve that problem. So not the best situation for Twitter. Next. Google Photos labels Black people gorillas. I remember when this came out, and myself and several of my colleagues were livid. So those of you might be familiar with this tool capability, especially if you have an Android phone with your Gmail and all that set up. It's basically Google's cloud photo sharing application. And they released this capability that essentially the algorithm will kind of categorize your pictures into different groups. As you can see here, in one case, Twitter took an image of Black people. So this is a young man and his friend, and labeled those Black people gorillas. So Google obviously had to go on an apology tour and figure out a way to kind of resolve that. So again, not the best situation when we are not thinking about these things when we're building out these algorithms. Apple Card algorithms shows gender bias. So this again was something that actually the US financial regulators had to get involved with, because they wanted to understand why it appeared that certain that men tend to seem to get higher credit limits than women on Apple's Apple Card's product, the Apple Card product. And it was clear that the algorithm that was being used to determine approval had some gender biases in there. And actually, in this case, it didn't even include, it kind of somehow managed to exclude women. So that automatically seemed to have some kind of inherent bias in the algorithm. So. And then the last one, this one is a little bit more personal and near to me. So this is a screenshot of a capability within in my product. And this also shows the power of really having strong partnerships with your customer base. Because again, this played in right directly into my inherent bias. I didn't think about this, but clearly there was a problem here that we needed to resolve, in the sense that while this might not necessarily have been offensive to students who can't physically walk, but it could have, but it definitely was not inclusive. So we've kind of gone through the exercise of changing walk-in to drop-in, so that those that are not able to physically walk don't feel like we've somehow excluded them from being able to make an appointment and just kind of drop in with their advisor. So something to think about. So creating a product inclusion plan. So I wanted to give you what I call like the 4 B's to building inclusive products. So these are some things that I've just kind of been, as a result of kind of reading some things, some books, and taking some courses, some ideas that I've kind of put together as to what I think are the key things that we need to focus on when we're building products. So the first thing, build a diverse product team. So by all means, I'm not advocating that you should, if you have a product team that's just rocking it, I'm not saying go clean slate and build a diverse team from scratch. But what I will advocate for is that, if you see that you're in a very homogeneous environment, in the sense that everybody looks the same, talks the same, has the same background, and that can be anywhere from like where they went to school, what kind of education that they have. Really challenge that with your organization, right? Start to speak up and really make sure that your organization is thinking about how they can ensure that going forward, that you are building your teams out with diversity, with the lens of diversity in mind. So I love this quote by Art Cleon. He's one of my, I love this book. It's a really small book. So if you're looking for like a really quick summer read, I highly recommend it, especially if you're exploring creativity. But this quote here, I think, is really applicable. You're the average of the ideas you surround yourself with. So your idea income. So the idea of really, again, build that diversity out so that you can ensure that you are able to have those diverse voices in the room. Number 2, be deliberate about challenging the status quo. So, challenge sentiments like if it's not broke, don't fix it. Those thoughts and statements are really growth and change killers. So, we need to do things like really challenge assumptions that underlie conventional wisdom in our company by saying, like, is just because we've always done it that way, does that mean that we should still continue to do it that way? Periodically disturb your work patterns to break up and those ingrained assumptions. So really thinking about like what are different ways you can kind of, who and maybe where you work to really help you think through things a little differently. Maybe think about reversing how, maybe even in the past, maybe you've done what, how, why. Maybe try doing why, how, what, right? Just to kind of switch it up a bit. And then always think through like confirmation bias. Always think through like, are you just doing things just because that's the way you've always done them? So I love this quote by Charlie Munger because I think it's very applicable. The first rule that you've always got to have multiple models, because if you just have one or two that you're using, the nature of human psychology is that you'll torture reality such that it fits your model. So I think he said it very very well, and there's nothing much more that I can add to that than what's in that quote. Number 3, broaden your reach when it comes to product reviewers, focus groups, and other customer engagements. So again, I think when we are thinking about building out those groups and those teams, ensure that there are diverse voices in the room. One of the things we're always doing is these like customer personas within product management. When you start to think through like, okay, am I looking at the breadth of those customer personas, and have I missed something in the room? And again, leverage your team, leverage the people that are with you that are coming from those different backgrounds to help you think through that. Build in accountability. So again, as I mentioned earlier, that when I showed you the walk-in drop-in example, I'm just so grateful for having the interactions and engagements with my clients that bring these things to light to me that me and my team may not catch. And it really helps us. And then, so one, I think it's important to have a good feedback mechanism. 2, have a plan for how you handle that feedback mechanism so that you are able to respond in a way that is timely and shows that you're taking what you're hearing seriously and that you're going to take some action, I guess, with it. So building those good, strong accountability systems are important. And I have 2 minutes left, but by all means, I would love to continue this conversation with anyone who would like to. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to chat with it some more. But other than that, thank you so much for attending. That was a quick 20 minutes, but I hope that it was helpful and insightful to you. And I look forward to hearing more from you, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you so much for attending.